let's talk about one of your buy low trade targets. Now, I do think that it is worth mentioning when we say buy low, we're not talking, hey, these are 4th and 5th round picks. We're not just trading declining assets for these guys. These are guys that their value is just a little bit lower than what they should be right now.
My first target here, I got T. Higgins. Like T. Higgins, somebody I do think is a bit of a buy low right now. Looking back at the year, DLF ADP, he was wide receiver 18, but looking at keep trade cut, which is a bit more recent rankings, he's down to wide receiver 23. He might even be down to wide receiver 24 by today. I was doing this show sheet the other day. So he's been dropping over the last couple of weeks because he's going into free agency. Some people think he's going to be tagged by the Bengals. Some people think he might have a chance to hit free agency. We'll see either way. But T. Higgins, in his 4 years, 3,600 yards, 24 touchdowns. Okay. He's averaging in a full season 75 receptions, 1,080 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Like if you take all of his stats per game, build it out to a full season, that's his average season. All right. And that includes, obviously, playing across from Jamar Chase, having Joe Burrow out for some time. But that average season, Mike, that comes out to be 225 fantasy points, which would have put him at wide receiver 22 this year, right next to DK Metcalf, who scored 225.4 fantasy points. I understand T. Higgins, maybe he doesn't have that wide receiver 1, top 10 upside while he's on the Bengals across from Jamar Chase. Burrow's going to have a really good year for Higgins and Chase to have wide receiver 1 years. Higgins might be back this season. I don't think he's back the season after that. And even if he's on the Bengals this year, that's his average season on the Bengals. That's what we can expect from him. And, if you're picking up the wide receiver 22, who's going to have a lot of upside next season as he goes and hits free agency and, does not stay on the Bengals, I think, with those stats playing across from Jamar Chase, he goes to another team. He's going to be much better than that. I think that's where he really gets that top 10 upside. Maybe you don't get that upside this year, but you're still getting a really good wide receiver long-term. Gives you top 24 upside this year, top 12 upside next year, I think. His target share, it's gone down, but he's still been productive. And Tyler Boyd's leaving in free agency. He's going to, I think his target share is going to go back up because of that. They got Charlie Jones there, Mike. We like Charlie Jones, but Tyler Boyd's a really good wide receiver. He does have a top 24 wide receiver season a couple years ago before they brought in Higgins. So Boyd's not a player to laugh at. So with Boyd on his way out, I think T. Higgins, his target share does go back up this year. We see at least that average season. I think he has a top 20 upside. Definitely, I think he could be like a wide receiver 15 if Burrow comes back healthy and looks good. T. Higgins is someone I'm looking to acquire right now. Everyone's excited about the youth and the young wide receivers coming into the league or who have just hit the league. I think there's something to be said for a guy like T. Higgins. You know what you're getting. He's still only 25 years old. He's got a lot of potential as he moves forward. He can be the wide receiver 1 in an offense if he goes somewhere else. I like T. Higgins, and right now I think you can get him for about the 110 in rookie picks. I would like to move maybe Jaden Reed, Deebo Samuel to go acquire T. Higgins. You might need to throw a throw-in option in there, a 3rd-round pick to sweeten that deal. I don't think you're necessarily going to get it straight up. In one quarterback, I think that rookie pick probably has to be more like a 107. But some other players, Isiah Pacheco or George Pickens, and then maybe throw in like a late second on top of those guys. I would love to upgrade from George Pickens to T. Higgins. I know Pickens is younger and had a pretty good season this past year, but I really like Higgins' upside on the Bengals and on a different team as well.
I agree. And it's one of those things we could say that the quarterback play in Cincinnati is better than that of Pittsburgh right now. Even Jake Browning played pretty well. And we do want to mention, too, you'd mentioned about Charlie Jones. We got those Princeton boys out there. Can't forget about our man, Andre Yoshavas, too. He's out there. Who played pretty well when he got a chance to play. So I'm all about Pickens. I would rather move Deebo than Jaden Reed personally. I just have a really hard time letting go of Jaden Reed right now. And I think everybody that has him is having a hard time letting him go too, because he's a tough commodity to move around. But I agree. And even if he does leave Cincinnati, he gets to pick where he goes. He gets to hand pick his situation. I'm completely fine with that. Let's move to mine. Hey, everyone says he's not going to be around. The Chiefs are going to upgrade, but you know what? I don't think so. I don't think that's necessarily going to be the case. I'm buying Kansas City Chiefs running back Isiah Pacheco. Nate, why?
All right. I just said I was going to sell him, so tell me.
For every seller, there has to be a buyer. I'm that guy. His DLF ADP is 59. He's running back 12. Keep trade cut ADP is 72, running back 13. I'm going to buy a quote-unquote unwanted player who screams upside. And when I say unwanted, everyone keeps saying, hey, the Chiefs, he was a 7th-round pick. They could just move on from him. They could replace him easily. But why? Why would they do that? So we got to put our late-round running back bias aside here for a little bit, okay? And just think to ourselves, maybe the Chiefs just really like this guy. Okay, it goes back to the fantasy industry trying to force their ideas on situations when we need to be reacting to what the NFL does. Nate, would you like a fun Isiah Pacheco fact?
Yeah, definitely hit me.
He's the all-time leading season scrimmage yards leader for a rookie running back drafted in the 7th round. He finished his regular season with 830 rushing yards and 130 receiving yards. That was a total of 960 scrimmage yards. Of course, that was last year or 2 years ago when he was a rookie. So pretty impressive. What did he do in 23?
Yeah.
Let's find out. 205 carries, 935 yards, and 7 touchdowns. Good in the receiving game, too. 44 receptions, 244 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And that was in 14 games. Extremely efficient. If he would have played more games, banged up a little bit here and there, would have been over 1,000 yards rushing. And I would say probably cracked 350, 400 yards receiving, possibly. You never know. So I'm all in. He's got 2 years left on his contract. I don't see any reason that the Chiefs need to get rid of him. He's still young. He's still under contract. Yeah. And if at worst you pay for maybe, I don't know, in Superflex, Rachaad White, if you're not a Rachaad White believer, some people are not Rachaad White believers. I'm just saying you could also move George Pickens. If you need a running back, you have an abundance of wide receivers. You move Pickens for Pacheco, a late 24 first, or it might take multiple seconds. And in a 1-quarterback league, you're going to need a first-round pick. You're just going to need to. Jordan Love, Deebo Samuel, Tajay Spears, those are all guys who are valued right around Isiah Pacheco right now. So, Nate, you might not agree with wanting to buy Pacheco.
Hey,
what are your thoughts here?
We need, this has brought up a very interesting point. Let's actually go back a little bit. All right, so I said I would sell T. Higgins for Pacheco and like a late second. Would you sell me T. Higgins for Isiah Pacheco in a late second? You have T. Higgins, I have Isiah Pacheco. I'm like, hey, Mike, I'll give you Isiah Pacheco and the 2010. Not the 210, the 210.
It's one of those things where I think in a vacuum, it may not look like a good trade because there are times, and both things could be true here. However, looking at draft capital that I have otherwise, my team needs, your team needs.
You can count it.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you need? What do you need, Mike?
I would love it to be like, so I'm giving you T. Higgins and I'm getting Pacheco. I'd love it to be like the 207, 206 would move the needle a little bit more for me than the
like a mid-second.
Yeah, that would move it a little bit more for me.
All right. I'll trade you Isiah Pacheco in the mid-second for T. Higgins. I do that. We got a deal. And then, Mike, this comes up with another point, okay? You're selling Isiah Pacheco for Rachaad White. I'm buying Rachaad White before I get into it. Okay, so you have Rachaad White. I have Isiah Pacheco.
Okay, let's make a deal.
What do you offer me for Isiah Pacheco?
Nate, here's Rachaad White. Here's your running back for last year. I'm giving you Rachaad White. I'm doing you a solid. I'm going to give you such a killer deal. I'm going to need Isiah Pacheco. I'm going to need the 203. I'll knock back a fourth, too.
Ooh, okay.
You're also going to give me $3 fab.
Of course I am.
Non-negotiable.
You make that early second. And you make that fourth or that early third, or you move back to second, and I'll make that deal.
No, you can't do a 3rd-round pick. We want to circle back on this one.
All right, we'll come back to it. But let me tell you why.
For the record, trading with Nate, even in
hypothetical
situations, is not fun either, and it is terrible because I know you never get a deal done fast with this guy. All right, if you want something done lightning speed, that's trade. Just look somewhere else.
Go to Zach.
No, because then Zach will show up at your house. It's just someone else from the crew. You get a deal done decently fast with Bob. Every time I've traded with him, it's not been a painful experience. So, just look elsewhere.
But let me tell you why I'm buying Rachaad White, who was the RB4 in the season last year.
Because he's your next trade target.
Exactly. He's my next trade target. So, currently the RB13 on DLF, RB12 on Keep Trade Cut. So, he's just on that cusp of RB1 in Dynasty right now, and we're having all these rookies come in. So, look, Rachaad White, he's not really being valued as a top 12 running back right now in Dynasty. And I think that's a little crazy, to be honest. RB4 this year doesn't really have any expected significant competition to be added to his backfield.
Sean Tucker.
Well, Sean Tucker is already there. We'll see if he makes it on the roster again, because he didn't really do much this year, unfortunately. And 272 rushing attempts last year was second most in the NFL, tied with CMC. So he's getting a ton of volume. But despite all that volume, he's got the second lowest touchdown total of any RB in the top 10. He only had 9 total touchdowns, and the only one less than him was Bijan Robinson, who had 8. So despite all this volume, didn't really have a lot of touchdown luck. The Buccaneers offense didn't really start humming until the second half of the season. So if they can keep that momentum and go into the season and have that offense look a little bit better, which I expect them to keep Baker Mayfield, so they're not going to have that struggle at the beginning of the year as their offense kind of starts to gel. Should already be pretty gelled. We hear all this about him not being efficient. He's not the most efficient guy on the ground, sure, but he gets a ton of targets and he's efficient with his targets. 3rd most in receiving yards, 4th most in running receptions among running backs, 9th most in targets. So, he's not a top 5 guy in targets, but he's a top 5 guy in both receptions and receiving yards. He caught over 90% of his targets, which is very impressive. 10th most in points per game this year with 15.8. I really like what I saw from Rachaad White, and he's my buy low. But Mike, I was doing this process, okay? And I'm looking at buying Rachaad White. And there's a player that's very similar, I think, to Rachaad White. Maybe offers a little bit more upside, and you can actually acquire cheaper. I'm doing the rare double dip pivot, and I'm saying that I'm actually now going to buy low on James Cook after doing my research on Rachaad White. Oh,
it's my God.
Crazy right now. Oh my gosh. Okay, James Cook, RB12 this year. Also, no expected significant competition to be at that backfield. I'm sure they will get somebody to replace Damian Harris or Latavius Murray. Maybe it's another old washed up running back.
Big shoes to fill there.
Yeah, I know, exactly. But the Bills seem really happy with James Cook. They have found their guy in the backfield that they can put along with Josh Allen, and they're really happy with that. They gave him 237 rushing attempts this year, which was 10th most in the NFL. He did have 4 receiving touchdowns this year, but the lowest rushing touchdowns of anyone with 200 attempts or more, with only 2 rushing touchdowns. Obviously, Josh Allen's goal line prowess is part of that. But also, come on, if you have over 200 carries, you should end up with more than 2 touchdowns. I expect that number. We talk about positive regression sometimes in fantasy sports. I expect that number to go up next year because it just seems a little unlucky to only have 2 touchdowns with that many attempts. And here's the thing with James Cook. You can get him a little bit cheaper than Rachaad White. And while I do really like Rachaad White, I think he's a great buy for those who are competing, and you can get him for like a late first, multiple seconds. You can also get James Cook for a similar price. And he offers a bit more upside because he's a bit more efficient. On the ground, he had 4.7 yards per carry. Rachaad White was under 4. He had 33 runs of 10-plus yards or more. Rachaad White only had 21 and did have more rushing attempts than James Cook. So while they're both great receivers, James Cook offers a little bit more explosiveness on the ground, a better offense we can rely on. And he was 4th most in the NFL among running backs with 10.1 yards per reception. So he's efficient through the air as well. He's only one of 8 running backs in the NFL this year to have a A.1 yard down the field or more. Is actually second among all of those, only behind Amir Abdullah. He's also only used hardly at all in pass blocking situations. When James Cook is out there, he's out there to catch the ball or run a route. 7th lowest pass block rate among running backs with 20-plus targets. And Mike, a little fun fact I found while I was doing this research I want to point out here. Devon Achane lined up in the slot 63 times this year for Miami. For an NFL high among running backs, 34.8% of his routes ran were out of the slot. That's something to take into account for next year. Let's see if that continues. He's basically a part-time slot receiver at that point. And then to finish out James Cook, 19th in points per game with 13.7. That number goes much higher if he gets some more touchdowns. His price, you're also looking like a late first, maybe 2 seconds. You might be able to get James Cook for an early second plus just a little bit on top of that. Some running backs I would like to tear down from to get Rachaad White or James Cook, Kenneth Walker or Saquon Barkley. I think you could trade down, maybe even get like a late first on top of these guys, an early second. That would be the best situation. But I would move off of either one of those guys for White or Cook and just get a second on top, because I think you're going to get similar production in the next 2 years.
Look, I agree. Of the two, I'd probably rather have James Cook personally. I think right now the Bills offense isn't in as much of a state of flux as I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offense is. And looking at, our lads' depth chart right now, the only 2 running backs under contract for the Bills next year are James Cook and Nyheim Hines. Ty Johnson, Latavius Murray, Damian Harris, all unrestricted free agents, and Leonard Fournette has already been long released. When you're talking about the 2 touchdowns, let's not forget there was a big spell of the season that the Bills, I think they went on a pretty good losing streak, if I remember correctly. I remember when the Eagles played the Bills this year, there was a lot of critical situations where they had Latavius Murray on the field, and I didn't know what was up with it. I think that was just poor choices that the Bills offensive coordinator at that time was making. So hopefully that gets resurrected or rectified, I should say, next year. I think it will. So I'm all in. Would prefer James Cook over Rashad White, but I don't hate where your mind is
2
at.
good running back values, I think, right now.
So let's look at who our next trade target here is, and that's me. He's a free agent. I'm not worried about it, Nate. And I know that you did put this tweet out there. I'm talking about Tampa Bay Buccaneers and soon-to-be free agent wide receiver Mike Evans. Jordan Schultz, at Schultz_report on Twitter, X, whatever the heck you want to call it. The Buccaneers had a soft deadline today to get an extension done with Pro Bowl wide receiver Mike Evans. This was a few days ago, but both sides remain far apart, sources say. Tampa Bay is set to take on $7.4 million in 2024 dead money by not getting a deal done today. Talks will continue, but my understanding is Evans is trending towards becoming a free agent, barring an unexpected change in discussions. But I'm going to tell you why I'm not worried about it. Want to know why? I'm telling you, he's never had less than 1,000 yards in his career. Nate, his career low was 1,001 in 2017.
It's really close, man. It was really close. There's another year, it was like 1,080 maybe or something.
Yeah, but he just had his best season since 2018. This past year was 79 for 1,255 and 13. And in 2018, it was 86 for 1,524 and 8. He's consistently devalued every year, and he consistently produces. He's a lock to start every week. If you have Mike Evans, he's not going on the bench. You're putting him in the starting lineup. Doesn't matter. Isn't that what you want? You want these guys like this. Look at his finishes. And this is from 2014 to 2023. Wide receiver 13, wide receiver 23, wide receiver 3, wide receiver 17, wide receiver 9, wide receiver 15, wide receiver 11, wide receiver 9, wide receiver 17, wide receiver 17. So he has 5 finishes as a wide receiver 1, 5 finishes as a wide receiver 2. It's a thing.
He's good, man.
He's good. And okay, we're going back to talking about, this kind of goes with T. Higgins. Is he going to be a free agent? Whatever. Mike Evans will get to hand pick where he goes next year. I will gladly pay like Travis Kelce right now. He's super devalued. I think you could probably get Evans and then some for Travis Kelce, though, like maybe a 3rd-round pick, multiple seconds. You could even pay David Montgomery for Mike Evans. And in a 1-quarterback league, Trevor Lawrence, a 25 first. And again, he's really closely ranked to Travis Kelce. So this is a scenario where a guy's future is a little bit uncertain. He's a free agent, but to me, he's a high-value free agent. And I don't mind paying up a little bit for a guy like that who, barring injury, he's going to go somewhere. He's going to produce. I'm going to put him in my starting lineup and feel great about it. Isn't it nice to have those guys that, like, you put them in your lineup and you're like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, that's my favorite thing to have because I don't like setting lineups.
Nate, before we move on to your next guy, you buying in or passing on this option? What do you think?
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of Mike Evans. He's one of my favorite wide receivers I've ever watched, and I already have him on a lot of my dynasty teams because he's been an undervalued player for the past 4 years. As soon as he got off his rookie contract, everyone was already too excited about Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and all these other players. And they're very exciting, but Mike Evans is consistent. He's a future Hall of Famer. I think he's still got, a good couple of years left, especially if he goes somewhere else. Like if he goes to the Chiefs, I think it's going to be really, really productive season for him because I don't think he's washed at all. If he gets a good opportunity, he's gonna take advantage of it. So yeah. I'm a huge fan of Mike Evans. I think he's a buy now, especially like, David Montgomery, someone I might be selling in a podcast a little bit later.
Nate, who's your last target?
All right, my last target, Mike. I can't quit this guy every season, every offseason. I'm like, this is a buy low opportunity on Kyle Pitts. And I think this is the year we finally get the production out of it. He is going to be a full year plus out of his injury, which definitely, that knee injury he suffered at the end of last season, the 2022 season, it definitely affected his start to this season, well into like week 10 almost. You could see he was still just not getting at the full speed. But one of my favorite followers on Twitter is Jeff Mueller. And by about week 13, he was kind of giving Kyle Pitts the clean bill of health. Next season, it should be looking great with that health. He's 23 years old, Mike. That is younger than Dalton Kincaid. So we still got plenty of time to buy low on Kyle Pitts. He's a young guy. Zach Robinson is the new offensive coordinator. He's going to be changing that offense in Atlanta. It's not going to be the Arthur Smith offense that we saw the last couple of years. This is going to be a very different offense, and we have to buy into this offense because I got to be excited about it. You got Bijan, Drake London, Kyle Pitts. You got all the exciting weapons we've been talking about for so long. If you finally have someone that's going to use them properly, we have to buy in before that window closes shut. Because as soon as they get a quarterback, you're not going to be able to buy any of these guys. It's going to be too expensive. And, there's rumors about Kirk Cousins going there. They can get a rookie quarterback, whatever it is an upgrade over Desmond Ridder. This is the buy window for all of these Falcons, but especially Kyle Pitts. Look, the Rams offense the last couple of years has been good. Last year, they were 7th in yards, 8th in points. They were 14th in passing attempts, while the Falcons were only 25th. 57% of the Rams passing plays were passing plays. Only 52.2% of the Falcons were passing plays. So just the volume that is going to be increased for Kyle Pitts is going to be huge. And when that volume increases, it's going to be really good because the volume was actually kind of already there sneakily. He was 11th in targets among tight ends, tied with Cole Kmet last year. You never would have thought that. And you know why you wouldn't have thought that, Mike? It's because even on the same amount of targets, 90 targets, Kyle Pitts caught 20 less passes than Cole Kmet. 20 less passes on the same amount of targets. You know what that is? That is the Desmond Ridder effect. And that's also going to change. So if volume goes up, if efficiency goes up, it's going to be a good time to buy in on Kyle Pitts. And like I said, the buy low window slamming shut here soon. He is a threat. He was 4th in among tight ends with 40 targets in yards per catch with 12.6. So he's still that downfield threat. He's efficient. It's just quarterback couldn't get him the ball. He wasn't used properly in that offense. I'm going out there to get Kyle Pitts. The 110 is something I'd be looking to trade for him, a late first. If I can move out from TJ Hawkinson, coming off that injury, if I can get a second-round pick on Kyle Pitts for TJ Hawkinson, I would make that move. I think it's kind of a lateral move from Hawkinson to Pitts, honestly, moving forward, if you take out the history. And if you can get a second on top of that, I love that. I'm in one quarterback. DeAndre Swift is someone I'd probably look to move for Kyle Pitts. Start the conversation there. Yeah, I'm
do you think you could? Like that. I understand what you're saying. I would do it in a heartbeat too, but could you is the question.
Yeah, I mean, I saw a couple trades like that. There's the value on DeAndre Swift is a little up and down, but in a non-tight end premium league, I think you have a chance to make something happen off of that. You might need to add some kind of mid-round pick on top of that, but I don't think you need to add too much, honestly. It's going to depend on who the Kyle Pitts owner is. He's one of those players that if someone's held him over the past couple of years, they're not going to give up him now. But there's plenty of people that are totally out on Kyle Pitts after being in for a little bit. There's people that are still, have that cult, fan favorite, with him. And what we've seen with Drake London, some of these guys, if they're on someone's team, they're not ever coming off. But, if you have someone who's just tired of sitting around for Kyle Pitts, you can get him for good value right now.
I love it. If I can get Pitts low now, you're going to have to buy into the Atlanta offense now. So all you Drake London stands out there, get ready to go buy yourself some Drake London. Until he produces, I'm going to buy a wide receiver that does that produce. And that's Philadelphia Eagles wide receiver Devonta Smith. His DLF ADP is player 46. He's wide receiver 19. Keep trade cut, player 40. Wide receiver 14. Oof, it's too low for a guy who's had over 1,000 yards his last 2 years. And that's being behind one of the best wide receivers in the NFL in A.J. Brown. I love A.J. Brown. And hey, guess what, Nate? He did average 14.2 fantasy points per game last year in both what himself and other people felt like were a down year for both him and the Eagles. Would you like to know what he's going to cost you? Of course you would. He's going to cost you mid-first. And here's the thing. I like all the wide receiver prospects that you can draft in the mid-first. That might be some guys like Roma Dunze, Brian Thomas Jr. I forgot his name. I almost called him Brian Wilson for a second there. But Troy Franklin. There's a lot of great players there. But Devonta Smith is going to give you more of a guaranteed impact right away. And guess what? He's still young enough. You can have this guy on your roster for another 6-7 years being a productive wide receiver. He's in the system with Jalen Hurts. They know each other well. You got that connection there. Everything you could ask for. So it's going to cost you mid-first. You might have to pay up for something like Kyron Williams. Justin Fields is going to get you Smith plus, even though Justin Fields has a bit of an uncertain future. He's quarterback in a Superflex league. He will be a starter next year. Might have to move Devon Achane. Costed him 1 quarterback, still mid-first. So again, you got to decide you want one of these good prospects or Devonta Smith. Nico Collins should get you Devonta Smith on a little bit extra on top right now just because of that awesome year Nico Collins had.